here we are again. I'm Joe, he's Nick, and even though that music just sounds like I should be, I don't know, relaxing, having my favorite smooth scotch, or maybe, because I'm drinking more, not so much scotch, but what is it I'm thinking of here? Irish whiskey. I'm having more Irish whiskey these days than scotch. Am I allowed to talk about actual drinking on the air? I guess it is the internet, so nobody's going to shut us down. Anyway, as I said, I'm Joe. He's Nick. You can chime right in anytime you want, Nick. You don't have to be quiet, just leaving me out there hanging.
I was just listening. Oh, that's half the fun of this. No, but I was thinking about your comments about scotch, and I'm not a big scotch fan, but I do like a good Irish whiskey. And one of my favorite drinks is a rusty nail. I think I've made one for you before, have I not?
You haven't, and if you had offered it, I probably would have refused.
I doubt it, because what you do, you know what goes into a rusty nail.
Yes. So unless this is the Vandergrat special rusty nail, maybe.
Well, of course, but it's Drambuie and whiskey. And the whiskey is softened, the sharpness of the whiskey is softened by the Drambuie, and the sweetness of the Drambuie is cut by the whiskey. And it's just, when you get it right, it's just a delightful. You can let it sit on your tongue and just, the flavors just explode. It's really very good.
Okay.
Anyway, that has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about next.
And we had a tough time when pre-production tonight. We were really arguing vehemently. If we had been at the same conference table, we might have come to fisticuffs. There's an old term, Nick. Fisticuffs.
Well, that is an old term. Fisticuffs.
I'm exaggerating.
I was right up there with Jolly Gay Willikers.
We would not have come in. Would not have come to fisticuffs. I was just joking.
Well, we certainly wouldn't have come to blows.
No. So, I would have blown a kiss at you, Nick. It was, I don't. Now, people I know.
In that case, put a mask on, okay?
They're taking that out of context, okay? By the way, have you seen the new Hue mask? I've seen this internet advertised on the internet, and it's...
Is this the one that covers your nose?
It covers your whole... It covers everything that the regular mask does, but the section over your mouth is transparent. It's plastic. And so people can actually see whether you're smiling or not. I kid you not. Look it up on the internet. The Hue mask. H-U-M.
No, I'm going to pass.
It's actually very funny.
Oh my God.
It's almost as funny as that guy with the plastic bottle.
You know what? I was just going to say, is it plastic jug on your head funny?
Yeah, trust me, Nick. It's not quite as funny, but it's pretty close. Particularly when you think of how serious they are about it. Anyway, how did we get onto that?
Oh, brother.
Coming to fisticuffs or whatever. So, and blowing kisses.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to sweep all of that aside. The debate we had earlier was we were going to talk about the invasion of Eastern Ontario by wild pigs. And that's a whole topic, and but we decided, okay, we're not going to discuss wild pigs taking over Eastern Ontario tonight, because we've just spent too much time talking about politicians, and then I realized, but I think we're going to end up talking about politicians again, so why wouldn't we talk about wild pigs? Oh, anyway, that's a terrible thing. I don't mean to insult my politician friends.
Well, as long as those pigs are bilingual and have been vaccinated against the swine flu, then they're certainly welcome.
Oh, the swine flu. Do you know I once got in trouble?
Forgot about that, didn't you?
I was once at a government meeting with top bureaucrats, and I happened to be talking, we were talking, and I happened to reference, half in jest, something about, we're not talking about the swine flu here. That was, I can't remember the context, but that was my comment. Come on, guys, be serious. We're not talking about the swine flu. And I won't say who it was, but a senior bureaucrat turned to me and admonished me for being derogatory toward pigs, and that the proper term was not swine flu, it was N1H1 or H1N1 or whatever it ended up being. And me being the irreverent person that I am sometimes, I mean, that was just low-hanging fruit. That was fruit. That comment back to me was a fastball a little up over the plate. Just waiting for me to
right where you wanted it, huh?
Right over the fence. So I said to the guy, so if I referred to R2-D2 as a robot, would that be insulting to robots too? Anyway, I did not get back. I did not get invited back.
Answer.
I did not get invited back.
No, imagine that.
Imagine that. And I thought I was being very witty.
The thing you were. Oh, that's clever. That is so clever.
My problem, Nick, was I was not being witty in the proper official language. Okay, there's your segue, Nick. Let's jump into it.
All right. Okay, because we've been promising to do this for a little while. And AJ, if you're in the chat room, I think I saw you in there at some point. Yeah, there he is. We've been meaning to do this, and I think it's time to dive into this because this has been a long simmering problem. When I first started on terrestrial radio, this is what I cut my teeth on. That municipal politics was how not only expensive, that was to multiculturalism. Yeah, that too. Bilingualism, by its very nature, is extremely expensive. And it's also inherently unfair because the table is tilted really hard towards those who speak French first. Because the standards they apply when you're trying to get a job with the federal government is that you've got to speak really good. You've got to speak marginal French, or no, how do they put it? If you're English speaking, your French has to be flawless, and your English they don't care about. If you're French, your English is passable because you speak French. So that it's not an even playing field. It's inherently unfair. But let's just deal with the economics of it for just a moment. If you remember, Joseph, about probably when did we buy the new heavy lift aircraft for the Air Force, the C-117 Globemasters? Was it 10 years ago now?
Somewhere around that. Something
in that range. Hey, think about the size of that airplane. Every single part, every subsystem and subsystem had a manual to go with it. There was the overall manual, and then if you wanted the hydraulics, or if you wanted the pneumatics, or if you wanted engine fuel, or if you wanted fire suppression, or if you wanted cargo, restraint systems and things like that, all these things each had their own manual. And what they did was they had to take those manuals, and at the time the going rate was 27 cents a word, translate them into French at who knows how much money. Maybe that's why we could only afford 4 of them, because by the time they get done paying for the translation of French, there was no money left over. Now, I have since found out through different people that I know, either in the Air Force or in positions to know, that those are still in their wrapping, in a locker, in CFB Trenton, and no one uses them because everybody who works on them speaks and reads English. There's a lot of francophones, but they all read and speak English, and they don't want to have to bother going to look for a manual that's been buried for 10 years somewhere in the deep, dark corners and recesses of CFB Trenton. So that's just one example. In the city of Ottawa, they have, not only do they have the French, what do they call it, the Francophone, the group that looks after Francophone affairs, they have to have translation services so that anyone coming can hear the translated into French when they have their meetings. They have all their everything they do on their website, every publication they put out has to be in both official languages. And Ottawa is not officially a dual language city. So we spend untold billions of dollars for putting out these kinds of documents, for doing these kinds of things to satisfy, I think the number is somewhere between 4 and 6% of the country's population. And that's the other thing about it that is unfair. Why should, 96% of the population who is never going to need or want this particular service, why do they have to pay for it the way that we do? With modern technology, you have online translators. You can send out an email at the click of a button that'll translate the email into French. So if someone coming from the eastern provinces or townships of Quebec, as an example, who have never spoken a word of English, wants to talk to their government, I'm not opposed to that. But it doesn't have to cost several $1 billion. A simple click of a mouse would be all that's necessary. Or, a click of a mouse, spit it out from a printer, put it in an envelope, and mail it to whoever is asking for the information in that language. We don't need the kind of, everybody above middle management has got to be fluently bilingual nonsense that we have now.
Okay. Come on, Nick. Spit it out. Don't sugarcoat it.
And the way they actually, I'm just reading something AJ posted in the room. He referencing a Randall Denley article, and the way that a lot of the justification for this is French Canadians who work for the government have the right to be supervised in the language of their choice. I'd like to know where that is written. Since when is it a right to be supervised? Because let's face it, if you were working for the federal government, you can probably speak both languages. What is it, Taiwan or is it Hong Kong? They have 27 official languages. They recognize the different influences of each language on the culture. Okay, I'm not opposed to that, but they do it right. They only work in English because that's the language of commerce. That's the language of transportation. That's the language of science. Even in France, when the French scientific community puts out a report, it's written in English. So why are we the only jurisdiction? Joseph, answer me this question. How come of all the Western democracies, we are the ones saddled with the most gross and incompetent leadership on the planet? How come we get stuck with that?
Well, I don't know. How come the Toronto Maple Leafs have not won the Stanley Cup since 1967? Some things are just destined, I guess.
Well, that's a destiny that's going to change this year, I can tell you that much.
I hesitate to defend our bilingualism policy because I think that there are lots of problems with it, okay? But there are some things that I have to take issue with. First of all, that 4% of Canadians, only 4% of Canadians speak French or are unilingual French. I don't know where you got that number from. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's significantly higher than that. But, this is going to be an interesting context to this discussion here, or the point that I'm going to make. Look at what they're doing in the United States now. In the United States, there's the movement to ban Confederate flags, take down statues of Confederate leaders, and basically almost wipe the Confederacy, the historical record of the Confederacy, out of people's consciousness, okay? On the grounds that the Confederacy was pro-slavery and Confederate leaders were slaveholders, etc. All very true. But at the end of the Civil War in the United States, when they made peace, there was a compromise. That compromise allowed the peace to be established and to be built on and to move forward. It wasn't perfect, but that's the nature of a compromise. The compromise was that, they didn't denazify, and I use that term guardedly, the Confederate South, okay? Because that would have been just continuing with the war in another form for many years. And so they had the great compromise